There's a tunnel in the world that everyone knows about, but no one wants to cross. Those who entered were never the same again. And what we discovered inside will change everything you think about fear. The night was cold when we arrived at the entrance. The wind carried a strange sound, like a whisper coming from the depths. The cracked concrete structure seemed to watch us, and each step toward that dark mouth felt like a mistake. But there was no turning back. We had to know the truth. We had to discover why so many people entered there and left transformed, haunted, unable to speak about what they saw. This isn't just a tunnel. It's an open wound in reality, a place where time seems to stop, and the rules of the world cease to make sense. Have you ever felt that inexplicable chill when passing by an abandoned place? That sensation that something is watching you, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself? Multiply that by 1,000. Because what we're about to tell you isn't an urban legend. It's not an internet story. It's real. And it's closer to you than you think. The Guajataca Tunnel, located between the municipalities of Isabela and Quebradillas in Puerto Rico, was built in 1910 to house a railroad line that cut across the island. Over 300 meters long, it crosses through a mountain and has been the scene of countless accidents, disappearances, and terrifying reports. The structure is made of old bricks, covered with moss and seepage that drips down the walls like tears of stone. The floor is uneven, full of puddles that reflect the darkness like broken mirrors. And when you enter, the temperature drops instantly. It's as if the air itself is different inside, heavy, dense, loaded with something we can't see but feel on our skin. For decades, local residents avoided the tunnel, not out of superstition, but because of real experiences. There are reports of people who entered and heard voices calling their names. Others saw shadows moving on the walls, human figures that disappeared when the flashlight beam reached them. One man swore he felt icy hands touching his back while walking alone. When he turned around, there was no one there. But the finger marks were there, imprinted on his shirt soaked with cold sweat. We decided to go deeper. We wanted to understand. The first thing we noticed was the absolute silence. No sound from outside could penetrate those thick walls. It was like being submerged in dark water, where every heartbeat echoed like a drum. The flashlight could barely cut through the darkness, and with each step, the feeling that we weren't alone intensified. The wall seemed to pulse, as if the mountain was alive, breathing around us. But the real horror began when we found the marks. Deep scratches on the concrete walls, as if someone had desperately tried to get out. They weren't old marks worn by time. They were recent. And there were many. Some climbed up to the ceiling, as if whoever made them was trying to climb to escape from something on the ground. That's when we heard it. A low, deep sound coming from the back of the tunnel. It wasn't human. It wasn't animal. It was something between a moan and a whisper, a vibration that seemed to resonate inside our chests. We stopped. The flashlight trembled in our hands. And for a moment, just for a second, we saw something move in the darkness ahead. Something large. Something that shouldn't be there. What would you do? Would you run? Would you continue? The truth is that when you're in there, surrounded by that suffocating darkness, all your certainties disappear. You become primitive again, guided only by the survival instinct. And the instinct screamed a single word: flee. But we didn't flee. Not yet. Because we needed to understand what was causing all of this. And that's when we discovered the most disturbing truth of all. The tunnel isn't haunted by ghosts. There are no spirits wandering around. What's there is something much worse. Something much more real. In the historical archives, we discovered that during the tunnel's construction in 1910, there was a catastrophic accident. Part of the structure collapsed, killing 17 workers instantly. Their bodies were never recovered. The company responsible for the work simply continued construction, sealing the corpses inside the walls as if they were part of the foundation. The surviving workers reported that in the following weeks, they heard knocking coming from inside the freshly cured concrete. But no one did anything. The project had to be completed on schedule. For years, the tunnel functioned normally. Trains passed daily, transporting people and cargo. But the engineers always reported the same thing. When crossing that specific section, the instruments failed. The lights flickered, and they felt a presence, as if something was watching from inside the walls. In 1953, a train derailed exactly in the middle of the tunnel. 4 people died. The investigations could never fully explain the cause of the accident. The tracks were in perfect condition. There was no obstruction. The engineer, who survived, insisted until the end of his life that he saw a figure standing on the tracks seconds before the derailment. A figure that was no longer there when the train stopped. The tunnel was deactivated in 1990, but the reports never stopped. In fact, they increased. Without the constant vibration of trains, without the noise that masked the sounds, the tunnel revealed its true nature. Teenagers who entered to film videos ran out screaming about things they couldn't explain. Couples seeking an isolated place fled terrified, swearing never to return. And there were the disappearances. 3 people disappeared in the Guajataca Tunnel in the last 20 years. None of them were found. The searches were extensive, involving rescue teams with dogs and state-of-the-art equipment. But there was no trace. It was as if they simply ceased to exist the moment they entered that place. You might be thinking, this is just coincidence. People get lost in remote places all the time. But here's the disturbing detail. The tunnel is only 300 meters long. You can see the exit on the other side when you enter. It's impossible to get lost there. Impossible, unless something or someone doesn't want you to leave. We turned our attention to the walls. Using measurement equipment, we discovered that the temperature in the center of the tunnel is consistently 15 degrees lower than at the entrances. There's no physical explanation for this. The ventilation is the same. The structure is uniform. But there, at that specific point where the workers were buried alive, the cold is penetrating, unnatural. And then we made the final discovery. Using ground-penetrating radar, we mapped the interior of the walls. What we found left us speechless. There were cavities, empty spaces inside the concrete. And in one of these spaces, we detected something that shouldn't be there. Something that moved. We couldn't explain it. The engineers who analyzed the data fell silent. Because what the radar showed didn't make sense. It wasn't infiltrated water. It wasn't rats or other animals. It was something with different density, something that changed position between scans. As if it were alive. As if it were waiting. The truth is that there are places in the world that hold secrets that shouldn't be discovered. Places where the line between what's real and what's impossible becomes thin, almost transparent. The Guajataca Tunnel is one of those places. And whatever is inside, whatever it may be, doesn't want to be forgotten. So here's the question that will haunt you. If you were there, in the middle of that absolute darkness, feeling that presence approaching, hearing that sound coming from the depths, what would you do? Would you keep seeking answers? Or would you run to save your life? Because in the end, fear isn't about what you see. It's about what you feel. It's about that primitive, instinctive certainty that you're in the presence of something that shouldn't exist. Something that defies everything you believe about reality. And once you feel that, once you look into that darkness and realize it's looking back, you'll never be the same again. The Guajataca Tunnel remains there, waiting. Authorities installed gates at the entrances, trying to prevent access. But the gates are constantly torn down. Whether by adventurers, curious people, or something else, the tunnel remains open. And the stories continue. New witnesses, new reports, new mysteries that no one can explain. We left that tunnel, but something stayed behind. Perhaps it was courage. Perhaps it was the innocence of believing that the world is only what we can see and touch. Because now we know the truth. We know there are places where the rules don't apply, where death is not the end, where the past refuses to be buried. And if you think this is scary, that this is the limit of terror a place can contain, you're wrong. Because what we discovered afterward, what we found in the sealed archives of the town hall, goes beyond any nightmare. But that's a story for another time. A story that will make you question everything you know about the places you pass every day without noticing what really hides there. For now, I leave you with this. Fear isn't just in what we don't know. It's in what we refuse to accept. And sometimes, the greatest danger isn't entering the tunnel. It's discovering that you never really left it.